Who's been very vocal about the graffitied high-risers is developer and former candidate for mayor Rick Caruso, who joins us now live. Good to see you.
Nice for being here.
If you're running the city, what do you do about this?
Well, first of all, you don't let it happen if I was running the city, because this was preventable. It was also predictable, and what's predictable is preventable. And it's a shame that it's happening. But I think this whole discussion on, whether or not it's street art versus vandalism is vandalism, and it's a crime. And I'm disappointed, quite frankly, that the leadership of the city isn't coming out and very clearly saying, this is a crime, we don't tolerate this kind of activity, and hold the people that did this graffiti accountable. I love art like anybody else, but this is private property and it's vandalism.
Well, LAPD has, Michael Moore has been out there saying, we have our officers out there working OT to secure the building, which this shouldn't have to be their main priority at this point in time. A lot of people, we just heard from Kevin De Leon, who says they're looking for buyers. A lot of people will hear your name and think, hey, this is right in your wheelhouse. Why don't you buy it?
I actually looked at this a couple of years ago. This has been vacant and a problem for a long, long time. So it should be no surprise to the city that they had a problem here anyway. But the problem with the project that I looked at, and I'm sure it's even gotten worse now, is by the time you finish the project, the building is worth less completed than what you'd have to put into it to complete it. So you don't even get a return on your investment. You lose money on your investment. I think there's a better opportunity here. And I think the better opportunity here is workforce housing. And get the city, the state, and the federal government together. We need housing for police. We need housing for firefighters. We need housing for teachers. We've got a project that's sitting in bankruptcy. I mean, it's in bankruptcy in China. When there's ever great disruption in business, there's great opportunity. Put that deal together and have federal funds being used to buy it, and to finish it for workhouse housing would be much less in terms of cost than doing luxury condominiums.
But what does that cost, though? Because and you're saying basically charge the federal government? Because can the city even afford that?
Well, I don't think the city can afford it, but what we know is the Fed has a lot of money, and you go to HUD and you see if there's funds available to do that, or you get private investors to come in and do it on an investment group. But it's more complicated now, there's no doubt, because of the bankruptcy. But the bankruptcy may also create an opportunity from a business standpoint to cut the right deal. But I just want to go back to where we were. This started where we allowed a building to be built, to sit vacant for a long period of time. The city should have known it needed to be secured. We should have been all over that. And to have police dedicated to this, where you've got serious crime going on throughout the city, is just shameful.
Well, you mentioned street art versus vandalism. You took aim at a column that was published in the LA Times by Gustavo Ariano. You said this is a silly question. It shouldn't even be a debate. We had him on last night.
I saw it.
Okay. Well, let's, in case our viewers didn't, here's what he had to say.
Especially a city where you have so much corruption at City Hall that, where was Rick decrying all of that? All of a sudden you get taggers. Now Rick becomes this crusading public citizen. And look, Rick, first and foremost, you should have tagged me as well. And not only that, you didn't provide a link to my column so your followers could decide for themselves.
What's your response?
Well, first of all, I like Gustavo. I think he's a nice guy, and I enjoyed his interview yesterday. We just disagree on this. But to clear up the record in terms of crime, I came out very strongly against every elected official that was indicted, very much against crime. My whole campaign was about getting rid of crime at City Hall. So Gustavo needs to read up a little bit more. On this, to me, there is no doubt this is a criminal act. It's private property. And for those people that say this should be celebrated in some form or fashion, if it happened at your home or on your building, on your private property, you'd probably feel differently. But think about the domino effect. You've got visitors, business people, people going to sporting events coming down. This building is a huge sign that we've got a decaying downtown, and we've got a big problem in LA, that this kind of thing can happen. I've never heard of such a thing happening before.
Not to mention the base jumpers, which is a whole other thing. You've seen those videos, yes.
It's insane.
On that issue of crime, which is something that's connected to the district attorney's race, we know that you had endorsed and fundraised for George Gascon when he was running for district attorney. You then supported the recall of him because you don't think he's doing a good job. You put out a statement today saying you were looking at some of the different candidates. Here's that statement, and it's clear Angelenos are ready for a change. And you talk about, as potentially people that you're impressed with, Jeff Chemerinsky and Eric Sedal, both of whom are Democrats, both of whom are a little bit more on the left side of the candidates that are out there. Why those two, and why not some of the little bit more conservative candidates?
I think there's a lot of qualified candidates. It's great. The problem is there's a lot of qualified candidates, and nobody, based on our polling, is breaking out, right? And to me, the question is, who can beat George Gascon? We have got to remove George Gascon as DA in this county. And somebody to the far right is not going to be able to do that. You know, I know very well this city runs pretty left, okay? So the reality is we've got to get somebody who's highly qualified like Jeff and Eric, has a lot of background and skill, a lot of experience, and can beat George. And I think both of these are good candidates. I think they're very sharp, and I support both of them, and we'll see who breaks out. I think there's others that are good too. But in our polling, it seemed like these were the two that can really break out.
I was going to ask, what did your polling show? Because you mentioned that in your statement, that you did your own internal polling.
We did an extensive poll, scientific poll, throughout the county. Everybody is sort of bubbling around the same level. Nobody is really breaking out, but what it showed is these two really could and have a good chance of beating George. Here's the scary thing. He has a good chance of winning. He will most likely make the general in the runoff because he's got a support base of about 17% that isn't going anywhere. So you've got to have somebody that's going to get in there that's going to be able to get those votes and beat him. We can't have another 4 years of George.
And essentially one of the other people, they might say Republican this, Republican that. If he's running against them, you can't say that about Eric Sedal or Jeff Chemerinsky. All right, Rick Caruso, always great to see you.
Great
seeing you.
Interesting choice.